And so our intrepid adventurers pick their way along the treacherous cliff path. Its ragged rocks threatens to throw them to the depths of the cliff face. Will they survive?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hang on a minute.
So the problem with this scenario is it doesn't convey a sense of ruggedness. I was really quite pleased with this when I built it. It looks pretty cool and it's great as a, non-treacherous walkway. Okay, it could be conceived as narrow, so it does obviously have some degree of threat. But it doesn't represent, I don't feel, the uncertainty of a path when climbing a rugged mountain. So I came up with a solution, which is modular cliffs, and this is the one of those pieces. So I'm going to show you how I made these, which are much more dynamic.
And so our intrepid adventurers pick their way along the treacherous cliff path. Its ragged rocks threatens to throw them to the depths of the cliff face. Will they survive?
So, as you can see right here, this is pretty much made up from just the scrap material, the scrap EVA foam from previous projects. I don't tend to throw it away, I bag it up and keep it for future use. I cut out several flat pieces of EVA foam, just straight up, different widths, all the same sort of height. The height was just an arbitrary decision, and then laid them down. Then I took the scrap elements, chopped them into smaller pieces, laid them across those 9 pieces, just to get a general idea of how I wanted to structure the overall cliff path, the main path. I used quite chunky, blocky parts so that would provide ample opportunity for other routes to climb the cliff from, providing a stable base for the miniature. To break up the blockiness of the parts that miniatures could stand on, I also needed the more jagged, elongated rock forms, and this is me just slicing lots of sort of triangular shaped pieces, I guess, very elongated, very pointy, to intersperse throughout the overall path, as well as to provide a nice top edge to the cliff pieces as well. One thing I failed to record was just make sure you seal the EVA foam with a heat gun before you do any of the next stages. With everything laid out and ready, it is then just time to start hot gluing everything down, just methodically working through all of the pieces as you go, just trying to keep a hold of the path direction that you want. Although these pieces are interchangeable, I think it's worth having at least one path that is just an easy read path. That still provides plenty of challenges, so just work through it and get it all glued down so that it's stable. And then cover the whole thing with PVA, and just do this in one go. There's no need to separate the pieces up, just put the whole thing covered with PVA. One of the things I actually quite like about this was I covered it with tin foil as I went, and this not only sealed the gaps between all of the blocky areas, it's a good strong enough material as well that it can handle miniatures being put over it. And with the PVA seal on top of it, it's a really sturdy base, and it provided a great amount of additional detail to all of the surfaces of the EVA foam. As you can see here, I also added an additional layer of detail with the traditional kitchen towel, just patted down with the glue as you work. And all of this whole stage can all be done in one pass. There's no need to wait drying times in between. Okay, so here's just 2 or 3 of the pieces. I have allowed them to dry, and then just sliced a knife through where the larger chunks pass over the tiles. And you can see here the texture that's come up from just overlaying the kitchen foil and the kitchen roll. I've also sealed this with a top coat of a black masonry paint, which is a really durable paint and provides an extra bit of detail and texture for natural structures such as this. It's worth saying, although done at a previous stage as well, make sure to check your miniatures that they are actually able to stand on the structures that you've created from these blocky EVA forms. It's worth checking again at this stage as well once the texture's on there, just to make sure it's not too rocky. You can always work to level out some of that texture if need be. So it's time to start painting. I have to say from the outset, I have never been a fan of just grey stone walls in dungeons, in natural structures such as this. It just doesn't work for me. I have seen enough rock in my time to know that rock comes in many different colours. Generally, I will start with a reddish or bluish colour and work from there. But I tend to just grab what's available, and honestly, once you've layered up a few colours and gone over with black washes and then highlighted with dry brushing, almost any colour will work. You know, you can be as outrageous as you want. It's a fantasy world or a different planet somewhere else. I still use grey, I just don't develop a grey rock or stone face. I like the underlying hints of additional colour, and you'll see that later in the highlighting colours as well. Okay, so now I need to add some depth. This is just household paint, emulsion paint, and it's a very dark blue that I've made a very runny wash from. You can see here, thin it down further with a spray to make sure that it runs into all of the nooks and crannies. And then I take a rag and wipe off from all of the high points the excess moisture, which is then left to dry. So here it is. This is what it looks like when it's dry. It's got some nice darks in it. It's got a nice warm reddish brown kind of rustic feel, and I'm overall pretty happy. So next step really is to just start adding lighter areas and highlights to bring out the contrast. So I've mixed up a deep purplish colour here. It looks a bit lighter than what it was in real life. Just made up from that red and blue acrylic paint you can see. And then this is sponged onto the rock surfaces quite generously. What I do then is take a rag and just really roughly rub into it to soften out some of that paint. Then I lighten that colour further. Now I've got this pale lilac colour that I mixed. I think it's made from that same red and blue, just with a whole ton of bunch of white in it then as well to lighten it up. And so I just get progressively lighter, and then again using the sponge I sweep across the rock surface, catching all of the high points, generally thinking you know, in how the light will hit the rock surface from above. At this point, I've still really only got a loose idea of how I want these pieces to connect together. The EVA floor tiles come with this surrounding interlocking tuff that just peels away, and I figured I could probably incorporate that and use what is ordinarily a scrap part of the EVA tile. So I just took a few rough gauge measurements from the individual cliff pieces themselves and just figured out how I could probably attach those to the back of each cliff tile so that they would lock together. So this is me now just gluing the interlocked tooth sections to the actual tile pieces so that I can make sure they butt up together properly. And this worked out quite well, although I will say if I was to do this again I'd probably give a bit more thought to it, simply because they can be a little tricky to lock together and take apart, especially if you're changing the original lineup of the build to something else. It's only a small thing and it would probably be easily got around. They do work perfectly well like this, but I would just possibly reconsider how I did this one section. I've got to test that join, so this is me just opening it up and then reclosing it just to see how it operates. And as you can see, it's a little bit fiddly. It's not the end of the world. You just have to work it a little bit. Now, I'm a lot more familiar with taking it apart and putting it back together now, so it's become a lot easier than this first occasion. So because I know that this is a stress point here where the tiles are going to be taken apart, pushed back together again constantly, I just want to add more super glue just to make sure there's definitely a lot of strength there. It was also at this point that I realised that although I'm thinking about how these tiles are going to lock together, I hadn't really given thought to how they're going to stand upright. So this is now where I start cutting a big bunch of rectangles and squares that I can use to put the rear support onto the tiles themselves, so that one or two tiles can stand up or the entire 9 tiles in a single length. Again, I didn't measure anything here, I just took an arbitrary dimension from one of the tiles themselves. The plan here is just to create a simple stand. So I use one of the longer rectangles as the upright and one of the square blocks as a base piece, and this should provide enough support for the whole tile section to stand upright on its own accord. One thing I will mention here is these tiles come with this pattern on the one side of them, and this is a sealed surface, so when you're gluing to this side you need to just roughly scuff up and break that sealed surface so that the glue can get in there and bond. And then it's just a simple case of using hot melt glue and plot one part down and then hot melt glue the other part. Again, no measurements here, it doesn't require that degree of accuracy, just eyeball the center of the tile and glue it on. And as with most of these structures, the more glue the better, so I'm just adding another bead of glue all the way around this supporting structure so that it can stand up to the rigours of the gaming table.
So guys, there you have it. It's a pretty easy build. It really mostly only uses scraps. It doesn't cost a lot. If you have enjoyed this video, it really is going to be a big help for me to build this channel. If you like and subscribe, share it to your friends, tell people about it, and if you make any of this, then post it and let me see it. Tell me about it. I'd love to see what it is that you've done. And I will see you soon, guys. Take care now. Bye.